So good afternoon or morning, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you for attending today's ERP Conversations live webinar. I'd like to introduce our host for today, Microsoft Retail and Commerce Marketing Leader Duncan Taylor, and welcome our guests, TEC Analyst Raluca Druta and PJ Agatovich. Duncan, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of ERP Conversation Live. As introduced, my name is Duncan Taylor. I'm the Global Retail Industry Marketing Director for Microsoft Dynamics. And today's discussion is all about the retail industry, and more specifically, the challenges and opportunities of omnichannel retailing, and how the Internet of Things is altering the retail world for both consumers and merchants. I'm very pleased to be joined today by two esteemed colleagues from TEC, the first of which is Predrag Jaklovic, and secondly, Raluca Druta. Predrag, known to all his friends and colleagues as PJ, is the Principal Analyst at Technology Evaluation Centers. He writes frequently on the state of the enterprise software market and vertical industry developments, and he joins us today from the fair city of Boston. Raluca is also an analyst at TEC, and if you're a hockey fan, she joins us from the even nicer city of Montreal. Her work explores emerging trends in human capital management, retailing, customer relationship management, and field service management. Welcome, and thank you for joining me, PJ and Raluca.
Hi, Duncan.
Hi, Duncan. Glad to join in. Thanks for having us.
Great stuff. Thank you. All right, let's get started with some of the basics. We know that retail is a critical sector for the US and Canadian consumer economies, and one that's been known for razor-thin margins. As well, we know that perhaps no other industry has been impacted by the rapid advancements in technology as retail, as we've seen the emergence of mobility, of the appearance of and the challenge of internet retail and that kind of thing. With e-commerce mobility and social media proliferation, what we now have is a kind of seamless environment for consumers to interact with brands. This is what industry refers to as omnichannel retailing. Actually, I'm sure this is a phase we're going to stop hearing soon. I've heard references to things like Omnichannel 2.0, and if there is such a thing as 2.0, I think that's going to be the last version, as it's a done deal. Omnichannel retailing is the normal way of transacting now, and it's just a case of the retailers differentiating themselves with the number of different channels that they can open up to satisfy the needs of their consumer. But Raluca, nonetheless, give us a little bit more about the implications of omnichannel.
Sure, Duncan. I think the easiest way to describe it is by perhaps imagining a typical scenario. So let's say you have a consumer who maybe researches products and browses inventory on her phone through the store's mobile app, or probably she can do it through an aggregate site or across multiple retailer sites. Once that's done, she may decide to purchase the thing that she found from her PC. The item is then shipped by courier, and of course there can be email updates and product tracking done through the order fulfillment process. A day or two later, she may decide to review the product on Facebook using a tablet, or she may even go online and review the shipping experience, for example. Now, if she decides to return the item, she might do that either through return shipping or directly in store. So this is the kind of consumer behavior we see today, which we call omnichannel retailing.
Yeah, thanks, Raluca. Right, so the consumer experience is one of flexibility and seamlessness, or at least in the well-executed omnichannel offering, that's the case. I think.
Exactly, Duncan. So with multiple channels and touch points, the data on buying behavior has exponentially increased in recent years, which is something that retailers couldn't have even dreamt of 10 years ago or so. Retailers can nowadays gather information from consumers through social media outlets, and they can also influence the consumer through these same channels. And these are really quite active channels. In fact, almost half of all consumers conduct online research or engage with retailers and peers on social media prior to making any purchase. they not only look for reviews and recommendations, but they also want to see how retailers respond to complaints or kudos from other customers. So this kind of highly educated consumer, which has access to loads of information, is another main facet of the omnichannel reality.
Yeah, thanks, PJ. So tech-savvy customers, informed consumers, exponential growth in mobile technology, and high expectations for a seamless experience, very high. These are the demands of today's connected shoppers, and I think it poses some big challenges for retailers in some areas. So back to you, PJ. How would you frame the challenge overall if you were counseling a new kid on the block, just getting started with cross-channel retailing?
Well, let's put it this way. Omnichannel retailing is about much more than just putting up a snazzy website and slapping a shopping cart in the corner. As you said, retailers have to keep up with the pace of technological change, as well as rise to the challenge of higher expectations. In fact, they have to try and make every single transaction and interaction a positive one. So, for instance, it is great to speed up the order capture process, but delivering the order quickly and correctly is a higher profile win in the eyes of the consumer. Moreover, retailers have to accomplish these tangible wins without digging into their bottom line.
I completely agree. This is a big concern. Retailers have got to get the balance of the quest to keep customers delighted with the need to keep an eye on the bottom line. I think the really tricky thing is that an unhappy customer can actually cost more in the age of social media than a little dip into the profit margin. They've got access to so much of their friends and public that they can make these things. They can make a bad experience a huge announcement. So, for example, it might be well worth the retailer's time and money to replace an item that a customer's not happy with rather than to suffer the consequences on social media. It would cost them a lot less. There's nothing to stop an unhappy customer from complaining about a poor experience online, and retailers need to deal with this, whether it's positive or negative feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. They must respond. In fact, not responding to at all to social media commentary may be a huge mistake if we are to consider recent research as being accurate. People really want to see responsiveness and a human element to the brands that they engage with.
Yeah, I think this is where we have seen that a strong social media strategy and a kind of rule book for social media conduct is a core component of successful omnichannel retailing. That rule book is probably a list of do's and don'ts as well. Okay, now onto a bit more of a micro level. What kind of challenges present themselves at the day-to-day or transactional level? For example, I'm thinking of a merchant who may have jumped in with a slick website, they've got next-day delivery at no cost to the consumer, and that they're very active on Twitter. What about the actual customer experience at the transactional level? Raluca, what do you think?
Well, a customer doesn't think about what channel they're using or whether there's a cargo problem somewhere in the background or something else. They just care about having one consistent, easy experience, and they expect that sort of 100% all the time. So let's say factors like inventory and allocation management, returns and exchanges, handling, promotions, discounts, shipping, etc., all of these processes and policies need to be defined by the mothership, and they need to be executed across all channels.
For sure. This is why it is imperative that retailers have access to a single source of truth and the unified commerce engine. And by single source of truth, I mean one set of data on customers, products, and orders. In fact, research shows that the main inhibitor to cross-channel success is lack of visibility into orders, inventory, and customers.
Yeah, I think that's where we do see omnichannel done really well as badly on the opposite ends. With the consistent it's done really well with the consistent branding and service levels. We know that they've taken the time to get the right tools and the right people in place, and that's certainly going to include a unified commerce engine to harmonize the back office, the front office, and actually all the channels.
Exactly. The customer-facing systems of engagement and the back-office transactional systems simply must be on the same page and looking at the same real-time data. If not, you will have some chaos taking place, and the customer is going to experience unfortunate delays and mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, who's to know what the channels of the future are going to be? And if a retailer is going to go through the overhead of spinning up new channels and spinning up a new commerce engine each time, then it's going to cost them a fortune. If you can utilize a single commerce engine that can serve up functionality, data, and gather in from each of these channels, then that has to be the winning strategy, because otherwise, as well as a huge overhead in technology, you're also going to have a huge overhead in making the things dance together, whether it's a promotion that's come out that you want to expose into a different channel, or even as simple as pricing by a region or something. Of course, another major gain is in having the unified commerce engine is the plethora of consumer behavioral data it can serve up. What do you think, Raluca?
Yes, I completely agree. And mastering the analysis of that data is both an art and a science, and it's totally crucial to the success of each retailer. I guess we'll talk a little bit more about this when we discuss big data, but while we are still here on this topic of the benefits of Omnichannel, I think a huge piece of good news for retailers is that cross-channel shoppers are actually much more profitable.
That's right, Raluca, and smart retailers know how to optimize this. For example, an intelligent recommendation engine that shows to customers additional products based on their search or purchase history can result in an almost 40% increase in purchases on that single transaction. I think what this reflects is the move away from being a one-dimensional transactional business towards being a multi-touch, interactional brand with a kind of living presence in consumers' lives. This kind of deeper presence and interactivity can make people feel like they're part of the brand. And we know that when people feel personally connected, they want to come back for more. Don't get me started on telling you about my infatuation with Trader Joe's or Starbucks stores. That's for another occasion.
Yes, and to add to that, I think brand loyalty can be further increased when the retailer engages its staff, and when the retailer makes sure that their staff is using the technology that they have at hand. And in fact, Gallup research shows that companies who engage both their employees and their customers gain more than a 200% boost in business outcomes.
I mean, that's a great number, but I think for us it shouldn't be a surprise. If you're engaging your staff in this process, you should expect them to be increasing the performance and their ability to sell. So what can retailers do to put the power of data and technology in the hands of frontline or decision-making staff? What do you think, Raluca?
Well, I think they need to implement learning and incentive programs. And these programs will make sure that employees are properly trained and motivated to adopt new technologies. Many of us have had the experience of being in a store and perhaps having a clerk look up inventory in other outlets because something we want is out of stock in the very store that we've just visited. Actually, hopefully better data management is going to prevent that from happening in the first place, but that's another story. So the near future version of this scenario might be actually arming the store manager with intelligence, basically through access to customers' shopping or browsing history, so they make informed suggestions to the client on the spot. And this is kind of the human version intertwined with technology of the online recommendation engine that PJ mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I mean, those recommendation engines, they've got two parts to them. They may have had things deliberately built behind them to build recommendations in that the merchandiser's chosen. But with also the use of technology, the recommendation engines are also surfacing product related to previous purchases. And if you've got intelligence behind that can drive that kind of engine, then it's going to arm the store staff with much better data than just using their own experience. Okay, so that's a bit of a sneak peek of what actual intelligence might look like at the in-store level in the near future. Since we're already bleeding into it a bit, let's frame the discussion of all of these data points and this deepening interconnectivity by kind of defining what the Internet of Things really is. PJ, do you want to have a go at that?
Sure. Well, according to our friends over at Wikipedia, the Internet of Things is defined as the interconnection of uniquely identifiable embedded computing devices within the existing Internet infrastructure. But okay, that is indeed a little bit jargony and tongue-twisty, and I think the easiest way to understand the IoT is with some plain English examples. Namely, you might have heard about connected toothbrushes that can analyze our oral hygiene status by spying on our brushing habits.
I mean, the other examples in the consumer world, we've all heard about the vision of the connected fridge that can send text messages when you're running low on eggs. But I think if we just focus in on maybe retail examples, that would extend to refrigerators reporting back where temperature is going, where temperature monitoring is revealing a potential fault in equipment, or even as far as intelligent shelf edge labels, where you could argue that those are a part of the Internet of Things. You could even extend that to active RFID tags. I mean, that's an embedded small computing device that, with the proper reader, can reveal data around the history or the specifics of a product that the retailer might be carrying. PJ, what do you think?
Well, definitely. So I could mention the example of Microsoft Accenture collaboration on the concept of, I think it's exactly called a connected design room. So in this case, when a customer steps into the dressing room, their items are automatically scanned using the RFID technology that you mentioned and are displayed on a screen. And recommendations can be offered on screen, and if the customer has, say, the wrong size or color or style, they can simply use the touch screen order change. In that case, an alert is then sent to a sales associate's phone, so the new selections can be brought back to the shopper in the fitting room.
Yeah, there's so many possibilities and applications with the advent of IoT that I sense some retailers could be a bit overwhelmed as to where to start in the development of all of this.
And I think that's understandable. It's a huge concept to begin wrestling with. I think it can lead to a kind of analysis paralysis for many companies, or at least a where do we start kind of moment. One sort of helpful way for retailers to begin thinking about Internet of Things perhaps is to consider it the Internet of their things. So in other words, how can they put their products, services, branding into a kind of connected constellation that will serve consumers, but also provide intelligence to guide the company and, let's say, the brand strategy. And I think a golden rule is that no matter what, or no matter how complex or data-driven things may become in the future, retailers have to remember that behind every transaction and device, there is a real person, there is a real customer.
Yeah, absolutely. The need to keep the focus on the customer's experience rather than on developing lofty applications that might actually not feel right to the consumer at all. I think this brings up one of the biggest challenges here, which is consumer privacy. PJ, I mean, you've been involved in consumer privacy stuff concerns before, and I've certainly read some of your stuff on it. What do you think, how much do people want to be known by the data that describes their lives? How does the retailer know where to draw the line?
Well, that is a good, tricky question and a difficult one to answer because, of course, it depends on each particular customer. In fact, retailers really need insight about each customer's preferences. One customer might appreciate a relevant mobile ad while walking around in the mall, but another might perceive it as kind of creepy and feeling like being stalked upon. I think we all know people who might fall on either side of that coin. It is indeed very personal. So the retailer must know whether each customer is a brand advocate, an influencer, a deflector, or he or she falls somewhere in between, so in order to tailor proper campaigns for each one.
Yes, I agree, PJ. And of course, they need to be very careful about having permissions in place from a legal perspective. At a minimum, this may mean ensuring that the terms and conditions are spelled out when asking private information from consumers, and making sure that the consumer is aware how the retailer plans to use that information or for whatever purpose.
Well, logically, that is a fix, but the fact is that people don't read the fine print when purchasing something online or subscribing to companies' communications. I, for one, don't have the time to read the lengthy fine prints just to upload the latest software update on my iPhone. So even if they did, in fact, give permission to be contacted or to have their data collected, they often don't realize the extent of it, or they really expect to receive tailored communications. So for an unprepared person, which is really your average person, this kind of highly tailored marketing that seems to know a lot about you can be a bit alarming or can invoke a bit of a Big Brother vibe.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, especially in this age of social media. Almost no individual experience is kept in the sphere of only that individual, and sometimes you don't even know it. I think retailers have to be very careful about how they interact with consumers like this.
Yeah, I think a large part of the answer will lie in becoming less fine print oriented, as PJ says. No one ever reads the fine print, and just being more transparent with customers when they're opting in may be the best way to go about this. And keeping in mind that the point is not to interact just because you can or just because you have the information or the data, but to be strategic, to always be seeking some sort of a gentle enhancement of the customer relationship rather than always pushing the boundaries and perhaps in the end alienating the loyal customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're concluding it's going to be a work in progress for most retailers. As the data they have at their fingertips increases, the temptation to use it in daring ways may be great and actually increase itself. So another major challenge is what to do with this overflow of information that we're calling big data. We see now that data comes from absolutely everywhere: websites, social media platforms, mobile devices, wearable technologies, appliances, cars, product, and even commercially available data as well to support some of this activity. The sheer volume of data makes it very difficult to manage. So the question becomes, how can retailers make this data small enough so it can work for them? What do you think, PJ?
Well, first of all, retailers must accept the fact that the amount of data is only going to increase. So sooner rather than later, they need to create a supporting infrastructure that will collect the data, consolidate it, and most importantly, make sense of it. Secondly, the days of limiting data access to a small group of business analysts or the so-called power users are really over. Retailers now need to develop a strong data culture in their companies where information is accessible and usable by everyone in the organization. If they do that well, then I think big data can help in the following four key ways. One, reducing costs by being able to analyze order versus inventory versus shipping data. That is, are we fulfilling from the best location and at best value? Second, two, making processes more efficient, whether they are internal or external processes. Three, detecting risks and fraud. And this is a big one. With so many transactions happening at any moment, there are bound to be glitches from time to time, and these can be very costly, or maybe even damaging to reputation. Think of the data leaks that have happened very recently at some big box retailers. This is not good, and it is not an easy thing to deal with. And finally, arming the right people with valuable data to understand our customers' needs better. This is obviously the deepest dive.
Yeah, so let's go into that last point a little bit further. So generally there are two categories of this type of data that elucidates customer behavior: transactional and interactional. Transactional data really just revolves around customer transactions, as the name suggests, but it can be enriched by digging into details such as time of day that purchases were made, days of the week, and these purchases were more likely to happen online or in store. And of course, the demographic aspect of the transactional data can be important as well. Assuming that you can match that transactional data against data that you already know, then you're going to get obvious things like gender of the shopper, age ranges, regions, etc. Now, interactional data is much more complex than that because it's a little bit more qualitative than quantitative. So here we're talking about trying to gauge the perceptions of a brand or company through analysis of the social media or other forums. It could be a measurement of how often a product or brand is discussed, or a more nuanced kind of social listening designed to capture opinions. So that can be really quite interesting. Basically, sentiment analysis.
Oh yes, sentiment analysis, I believe, is going to be a big factor in the very, very, very near future. There are a handful of tools that are doing a fairly decent job of it, but it still has a fairly long way to go. I think once the technology is in place, the key will be arming the right people with its output. Basically, what I'm referring to is making sure that product marketing, brand management teams stay close to that data. I guess I'm always wearing my HCM and talent management hat. You really want to empower your staff with this intelligence, both for the sake of smart decisions, but also for the sake of employee engagement. So it's really important that big data is not seen as a tool just for upper management, but rather as a kind of soundtrack to everyone's job. Maybe you could control the flow of information to the right people, but it must be otherwise an open book.
Yeah. So along with the new opportunity to bring your employees into the fold, I think the biggest revolution that IoT could bring is the ability to make strategic decisions about the entire customer cycle, from marketing to purchase and through that into post-purchase. I certainly remember, I'm sure you do, when that the sole source of intelligence not very long ago was expensive market research and focus groups and mystery shoppers. Now that we have data being collected from every conceivable source 24/7.
Yes, and I would argue that while some of the data we may see collected will be useless, much of it will be in fact way better than the old market research or focus group data. The reason is that traditional market research was limited because the topic or study or line of questioning had to be predetermined. Now we are casting a wider net and using intelligent analysis to decipher patterns and trends that never would have been visible or identifiable in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. The sky's the limit in the future. We can take data on the impact of web page layout and color changes and demographic behavior to e-commerce leaders. I've seen things like heat maps and stuff like that of analysis of web pages. We can now share store flow, foot traffic, product placement. So the Microsoft platform can even analyze the impact of store lighting conditions on purchasing behavior. All of these kinds of data points can be shared with store and regional operations manager on a regular basis.
Right. And most of the major software providers and many best-of-breed solutions offer a way to help retailers take advantage of what the IoT brings to the table. For instance, beyond the first step of informing regional managers or business stakeholders, the integration of this data into a CRM system can prompt action with suppliers and customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're basically extending the reach and impact of the data you've collected and reducing the lag time between data discovery, responsive decision-making, and implementation of strategies. I mean, I know Microsoft has a great suite of products around this, right from social listening, where you can be gathering in data around publicly available tweets and Facebook comments. You can pick up on that sentiment analysis. You can measure that over time to see the impact of things that you're trying to achieve in your retail world is having a positive or negative impact on what your consumers think about you. Take that into straight up CRM, where that can be actually driving actions of either automated actions to either send messages to your consumers or prompt call centers to take action to contact a customer to win them back or thank them for their loyalty. All of these things are available right now. So we're coming to the end of our discussion, and we'll be taking questions in a moment. But a key takeaway that I want to emphasize is that it's still all about the consumer.
Yes, exactly. The core tenets of fostering a relationship between the consumer and the brand have not changed. It's all about customer experience, regardless of how many new channels and data points might crop up in the future. So guarding customer privacy while at the same time learning more about customer preferences and designing innovative shopping experience will be in the future the line to walk.
Yes, and let me add to that I think astute software solutions for retail have a real role to play here. And by the way, keeping up with the times for retailers means being a media company in addition to being a merchant. So in the age of Omni-Channel and the Internet of Things, retailers need to be driven by employees who understand both of these businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. I think it's safe to say retail has always been a complex business, but thanks to some of the things we've talked about, never has that been more true than now. Thanks, PJ and Raluca. We're going to go to the floor for questions now, and we've got a few questions lined up. So the first question I've got, I'm going to point this at you, PJ. Is the Internet of Things actually a new thing, or is it just a new label or way of thinking about the connected world?
Well, definitely the concept of the Internet of Things have existed for decades, and I'm sure many of us have heard about SCADA and PLC, programmable logic controllers at the equipment and in plants and process environments and all that kind of stuff. And I think there were even some concepts somewhere in like 1990. I'm aware of Xerox or some other copier manufacturers. They've enabled their copier machines to sort of send a message to the office when the toner level was getting low so that it would be refilled and all that kind of stuff. So basically the Internet of Things would be the evolution of SCADA PLCs of maybe 4 decades ago, and now we had machine-to-machine connectivity maybe a decade or so ago. And the Internet of Things today, there's just the reason why the Internet of Things is so proliferated is that these devices are cheaper, the technology is digital, the standards are there. It is simply pervasive and easy for, and also the devices are also much smaller, so it's easy to embed in everything, in cars, in you name it.
Yeah,
thanks, PJ. Raluca, what do you think?
Yeah, if I can interject a bit, I think businesses have also become aware of the fact that people are willing to give up their privacy or part of their privacy in exchange for stuff, in exchange for better experience, and so on and so forth. So I think social media definitely contributed to that.
Yeah, thanks for that. So the next question I've got, I'm going to pick up the initial response to this next question, and it says, can you share an example of a retailer doing a great job of managing omni-channel? The question also says, even if you can't share the name of the retailer, I'll share the name of the retailer because I started off being a customer long before I had a business relationship with them, and they're called Charles Tyrwhitt Shirts, and I'm a bit extra tall, so it's difficult for me to find fitted shirts, and I became a Charles Tyrwhitt customer more than 20 years ago. It was I would actually say it's pre-internet. They were publishing catalogs every month, they were sent through the post, and I would be buying fitted shirts at a great price thanks to the catalog. When internet shopping rose, they were obviously very quickly onto a website, and the great thing about as they developed their website, they were already they started off just by having a very generic transactional website where you're literally going in and picking the shirt size that you wanted. Now as you advance, they're now able to preload the website with just the shirts that they have in stock that are in my size, so I'm not having to go searching for it and being disappointed. And then when you consider the Omni-Channel, they've adopted a policy of buying it anywhere and returning it into any of their stores. And they don't have a great many, but they have got stores with in some very nice locations, like near Times Square in New York, etc. And they've adopted a policy of being able to buy online and return it into any of those stores and have full visibility. In addition to that, if you're going into the physical store, you're now able to interact with the store personnel. They have access to my shirt sizing through the fact that I've registered online, and they in the four walls of the store can direct me to just to the shirts that have my size. So I think that's a great example of omni-channel retailing, because not only are they transacting across the channels, allowing you to buy online, pick up in store, and return into store for an online purchase, but at a more basic level, they're delivering great customer service just by being more efficient in the way that they're dealing with me when I go into the physical store. So I picked up that question. The next question I've got is, I'm going to point at you for this, Raluca. When it comes to privacy and security concerns with collected data and data storage, what are the options and typical policies around the security of stored data? That's a tough one.
Yeah, yes. It is a very tough question. Again, I feel there should be, and I think that there should be a lot of transparency. The best policy is being transparent. Tell the customer what kind of data you're going to collect and for what purpose, and always ask permission. Whether you're going to trace the movements, their movements throughout the store via a Wi-Fi network, or whether you're going to trace their history, their interaction with your company. I think it's fair for customers to know and to make the right decision.
Yeah, thanks for that, Raluca. You got anything to add there, PJ?
Well, not really, but I think we also discussed a lot about that, in our webinar. So yeah, it is always come to sort of one-on-one knowledge of each individual customers and what they feel comfortable with or not. I, for example, when I go to any local grocer and they keep asking me for my phone or whatever, I am comfortable giving them my zip code, but perhaps maybe email, but phone I don't think I would give to anyone at this stage.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so next question. I think we've just got this time for one more question. If you're a medium-sized business, how would you be coping with all of the data that you're intending to collect in order to be able to take advantage of this large amount of data that you're collecting in order to increase your ability to service customers? PJ, do you want to pick up that one?
Well, definitely the principles of handling data and having the proper staff who is able to ask proper questions and conduct proper analysis, they don't really change, when it comes to company size and all that. Maybe the volume and the deeper pockets are on the bigger guys. So as a small and business and all that, I would probably look for some maybe cloud-based, powerful, business intelligence tools, and definitely try to make sure that I have the staff that is knowledgeable and that know what data points they need to be looking for and what questions they should be asking.
Yeah. I think in addition to that, I think it's fair to say that the ability to hold this volume of data has come down dramatically with the popularizing of cloud. Certainly from a Microsoft perspective, with the cloud capabilities there are fantastic. We've got Microsoft Business Solutions that are available in cloud. So even if you still have a good chunk of on-premise solutions, if you're able to actually push the transactional data to the cloud and match that in with commercially available data like weather patterns and stuff like that, very quickly you could be making sense of that stuff in order to make buying decisions and forecasting decisions based upon that. So I think the opportunity for medium-sized retailers now is better than ever. It's just a case of being able to get it corralled, get the data into a single place in order then to use the tools to build upon it. Any closing thoughts there, Raluca?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, in the case of an SMB, I would agree with what PJ recommended. SaaS solution would be the best, and definitely resort to as much service as possible and train your staff. And don't forget to ask the right questions, because you don't want to start investigating things that may not actually be of use to your business. Yeah. Okay. With that question, we've come to the end of this episode of ERP Conversation Live. From my perspective, I'm as I said, my name is Duncan Taylor. I'm from the Microsoft Dynamics team, and I'd just like to thank my fellow speakers, Predrag Jeklovic and Raluca Druta from the TEC group. I'd just like to say thank you for joining me on this webinar. Thank you.
Thanks. That was great.